This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by Paul Food and Beverage, makers of professional filtration solutions for cannabis oil processing. If you need technology to clarify cannabis oil, to remove color, or to detect pathogens, look no further than Paul. You can learn all about the technologies that Paul has to offer over at bit.ly.com/PaulCannabis, with the P in Paul capitalized as well as the C in cannabis. PALL, bit.ly.com/PaulCannabis. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, December 8th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 1004 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead off the week's news with Friday's big headline as the House of Representatives voted 228 to 164 in favor of passing the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, better known as the MORE Act. The vote came just as we were publishing on Friday and is historic in that it's the first time an American legislative body has passed such a comprehensive legalization bill. The MORE Act, if passed into law, would remove marijuana as a Schedule I drug while implementing programs like community reinvestment and cannabis charge expungement. Of course, that's a colossally large if at the moment, given the fact that the Senate is controlled by Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, who doesn't pass any bill that's not a tax cut for rich people. So this one is more symbolic at the moment than it is practical. Of course, with the control of the Senate still up in the air pending Georgia's special elections next month, that could change with the right outcome there. David Downs over at Leafly has an excellent story on this that really dives into the details. I would direct you that away to read more. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Keeping the old browser pegged to Leafly, we have Dave Howard picking up on some cool news out of Nebraska, where this past weekend, cannabis activists announced plans to push both an adult use and a medical marijuana legalization ballot measure in 2022. Nebraska voters were close to voting on a medical cannabis initiative last month, but a legal challenge by prohibitionists in September managed to knock that item off the ballot. On Sunday, activists with Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana announced plans for two initiatives that would allow for what they are calling a, quote, full adult use, unquote, of marijuana. A term that I think nicely encapsulates what we're all working towards here. Given the success that legal cannabis activists had all over the nation during the November elections, including Nebraska's neighbor to the north in South Dakota, it seems like the chances are good with this one. Not a bad storyline to keep on your general radar. Our final top story today returns to another headline we touched on Friday as details are emerging for the proposed adult use sales program being worked on by New Jersey lawmakers, who need to come up with a legislative solution to adult use sales after the general policy change was passed last month via ballot measure. The news first broke late last week that a compromise plan had been hammered out between New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, a supporter of legalization, and state lawmakers, though details were sparse at first. NJ.com nicely dove into this one and sussed out some of the plan's structure. As written now, New Jersey's adult use legislation would create 37 large-scale cultivation licenses to be given out over the first 2 years, with an unlimited number of so-called micro-licenses available, defined here as any company with 10 or fewer employees. A sizable portion of all sales taxes would go towards social justice programs, as would all of the taxes levied on cultivators. You can open up the full bill itself via NJ.com's story, which also has all the rest of the details on this one. If you're watching New Jersey, you should have a good handle on this. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Paul, makers of professional filtration solutions for cannabis oil processing. The Paul Corporation is a global leader in high-tech filtration, separation, and purification, and is now pivoting into legal marijuana, bringing all of their accumulated scientific and technological capital to bear. Paul offers the world-class technology that you need to get the very best out of your legal cannabis oil. With solutions for clarification, color removal, and pathogen detection, Paul is there for you with a wide range of solutions guaranteed to fit your needs. To learn more about Paul's wide suite of cannabis oil processing technologies, you just need to open up bit.ly.com/PaulCannabis, with Paul spelled P-A-L-L. That's bit.ly.com/PaulCannabis, and you do need to make sure that the P in Paul and the C in cannabis are capitalized. bit.ly.com/PaulCannabis. Big thanks to everyone over at Paul for helping us keep the news lights on. All right, time for the Blitz. We have a short train of finance stories kicking off the Blitz today, with Colorado-based GrowGeneration taking the lead with an announcement of plans to raise $125 million in funding via a public offering. The company, which operates a chain of 36 gardening stores, filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission yesterday to raise the $125 million, which will be used to grow the company's operations. Multi-state cannabis operator Verano Holdings is up next with its plans to go public via a reverse takeover with a valuation approaching $3 billion. The company will raise around $75 million via its reverse takeover, making it the third largest company trading up on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Verano currently has operations in 14 U.S. states with 1,600 or so employees and 46 retail shops. Bringing up the tail of the three finance stories is Air Strategies, which is raising $75 million in funding via a 4-year note carrying an interest rate of 12.5%. The offering is being led by Congressional and will close this month. New Cannabis Ventures picked up on numbers from BDSA showing how legal cannabis sales in California, Oregon, Arizona, Colorado, and Nevada have fared through October. While sales figures for the month of October were slightly down from previous months, sales were up overall on a yearly basis at a nice healthy rate, with year-on-year totals up 30% in California, 39% in Arizona, and 34% in Colorado. This is a good story to add to your list in full to read today, with lots of good detail to absorb. Mr. Kyle Yeager brings us down to Mexico for an update on that country's efforts to implement legal adult use marijuana as decreed by a 2018 Supreme Court decision. We've been tracking this one ever since, as the deadline for lawmakers to pass a proper legalization bill has come and gone a few times now. But as Kyle has it, it seems like we're actually close to this one closing out, as it's looking pretty good that a full legalization bill will be cleared for a full vote by the Chamber of Deputies as early as tomorrow. Right now, the actual deadline for lawmakers to pass legalization in Mexico is December 15th, so we'll be back with updates on this within the week. Kyle's story on this one is a good one if you want more background and context. Medical marijuana patients in Missouri will soon have access to legal edibles, as the state has licensed its first manufacturing company. The CEO for the company, Clover, said they have 800 pounds of cannabis flower stocked up and ready to go the moment state regulators give them the final green light, which is expected to come within days. That would mean that Missouri shops could have edibles for sale sometime this month. Finally for today, we have Ben Adlin writing over Marijuana Moments with news concerning the recently passed MORE Act, which we detailed at the top of the show. According to a new report just put out by the Congressional Budget Office, the MORE Act, if signed into law, would generate more than $13 billion in net revenue for the federal government over the next 10 years, while knocking off $1 billion in cost from the prison budget. Ben's story nicely lays out all the CBO's findings, which is worth the full read. Pop on over. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.